Good thing those kids aren't excited. He is shrouded in mystery. And the truth of the matter is, we don't know all that much about him. What we do know is his name is called, he comes forward, he stands tall, true, and faithful. In a sense, he kind of has his time in the batter's box, and then he goes back to the dugout. Never, ever to be heard from again. Now, I'm sure somebody's thinking, what in the world is he talking about? Who is he talking about? Well, I'm talking about Joseph, of course. And I often refer to Joseph as the Rodney Dangerfield of the nativity scene. Not only does he get no respect, nobody even pays him much attention. Of course, I've been in the maternity ward twice in my life, and nobody paid any attention to me either. So that's the way it goes. But I kind of get it. I kind of understand. So, nevertheless, Joseph was the epitome of the strong, silent type. And when I say silent, I mean silent. Because Joseph never says a word. Not a grunt, not a groan, no, not much as a syllable is recorded. Mary has the Magnificat, and Joseph is silent. Joseph, we know, does a fair amount of traveling, does a lot of protecting. He runs to Egypt and then all the way back with his family, all the way up to Nazareth, which was probably, from Bethlehem to Nazareth would be like you and me walking together all the way to Lansing. And then, of course, there was that one time, of course, you remember, and this is truly the last time we ever hear about Joseph ever again, probably more than likely because Joseph died. And because of that, Jesus became, in essence, the man of the house. But you remember Joseph and Mary doubling all the way back to Jerusalem to find a precocious boy on the verge of puberty, Jesus sitting there peppering the scholars with all kinds of questions. And then, as I said before, Joseph is gone. The question that I often ask, and perhaps a good many of you ask as well, of all the men in Israel, why did God choose Joseph? Why was Joseph singled out? Beyond the fact that Joseph would connect Jesus to the line of David, no small thing, what did God see in this quiet, strong life that he didn't see in abundance in others? And that's a good question. And my sense is that the answer might have application to our lives long, long after the lights are taken down and the scent of pine, or actually you might say genuine, authentic, fake pine scent fades. Christmas 2019 becomes a memory, but let's not rush too far ahead. We rush too much. Matthew tells us that Joseph was a just man, a righteous man, an upright man, which is to say that Joseph lived his life true to the law, and not just in the strict legalistic sense of crossing his T's and dotting his I's, but as we clearly see in the text, by obeying, by choosing to risk his reputation and his future. Someone said, I read this week, Mary was blessed amongst women, Joseph was embarrassed amongst men. Refusing the easy way and embodying the hard and the confusing way. As one of my favorite preachers would put it, refusing to cut and run and choosing instead to stay and not to play. Love, Joseph's love for Mary, which at this point I am pretty certain has very little, if anything, to do with romance or hormones or all the other things that you can see on the Hallmark Channel. His love for this strange and wonderful child fulfills the law's deepest intentions. We see that this ethereal thing called love, has in fact the feel of it of obedience has the contours of loyalty, bears a striking resemblance when all is said and done, and when your feet hit the ground. Love looks an awful lot like faithfulness, which is one of the things I point out to people when they get married at St. Mark. If you look at the surface itself, love isn't mentioned very often, but there's an awful lot of talk of faithfulness. That being said, Matthew doesn't say this, he doesn't even suggest it, but I am willing to say that the night that Joseph awoke in a cold sweat, until the time that he held that strange and wonderful little boy in his arms, there were moments when he reconsidered, when the exit looked mighty appealing. Such moments, he would have told us, of us who have a tendency to think of angels as guys with wings and magic wands. That's an interesting take on it. I'll have to remember that. We'll have to get some magic wands next year. But nevertheless, of course, with wings, that if an angel ever crosses your path, run. And if an angel ever tries to talk to you, cover your ears. Hail, righteous one, you are blessed. You are about to drive off a cliff, but don't be afraid. He teaches us, Joseph does, this silent man, that when all is said and done, what love really looks like is that it looks like faithfulness. He teaches us that God can enter the messiest of situations and the most painful and the confusing of moments. That sometimes being a disciple and following Jesus doesn't involve so much as preaching a sermon, but standing true and tall where God has placed you at any given moment in life. And that knowing through all of the circumstances, and I don't say this easily, even those circumstances that at times seem to contradict and make a mockery of our own faith, the one who called you will be faithful and will see you all the way through. The story has been told, and in fact, I'm sure if you remember the play last week, and I'm sure in churches all throughout the world, this has happened again and again and again. There was a crisis, the Christmas pageant. It turns out that the little boy who was chosen to be Joseph, his stomach didn't feel so good. And so the director ran to the pastor, frantic in a panic, and she said, "Now what in the world do we do, Pastor? What do we do?" And the pastor, because we're trained to do this, was so calm and collected and quick with a solution. And he said, "Joseph, that's no big deal, Gabby. Calm down. Joseph is so easy to play, even Gary Appelt can do it. So don't worry about it. He doesn't have any lines. Just have one of those bathroom shepherds move over and stand next to Mary, and nobody will know the difference." We learned today that that isn't necessarily true. In Joseph, we are invited to see that some of life's most important lessons are taught without any words at all. Amen.